When Congress passed the $2.3 trillion COVID relief bill recently, there was a lot of yapping about how lousy it was. First, members of Congress yapped about how ridiculous it was, that the bill was 5,600 pages long, and none of them had time to read it before they were supposed to vote on it. Then, once people started digging into the bill and actually reading what it said, they started yapping about all the pork in it. The bill earmarked American taxpayer dollars to gender issues, to Israel, to the Kennedy Center. The media and congressional members alike all yapped about how all of these things had nothing to do with helping Americans recover from the damage done by COVID-19. And of course, these are valid yaps. But personally, I am very, very, very excited about one thing buried in the 5,600-page bill that has so far gotten very little yapping. And that is the measure which requires the Pentagon to release a report containing information about its UFO task force within 6 months. Yeah, that's right. Buried in the COVID relief bill is a mandate for our government to yap about what it knows about UFOs. This comes after the Pentagon has released some amazing videos over the past couple of years recorded by our military of UFOs, or UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, as they're now being called. They've released all this amazing footage that simply cannot be explained by anything we currently know about physics, which makes it seem like the government is actually really seriously getting ready to yap. According to the bill, the report must include a detailed analysis of unidentified aerial phenomena data and intelligence reporting collected or held by almost all of our country's intelligence agencies. If the executive branch honors this measure, we'll actually get to know in the next 6 months what our government knows about UFOs. And you thought 2020 was pretty crazy.
Well, if there's a thing, it's rotating.
My submission is that what we are looking at is truly, by definition, exotic technologies, beyond next generation technologies.
Mr. President, as we wrap up here, are there UFOs?
Well, I'm going to have to check on that. I will tell you this. We now have created a military, the likes of which we've never had before in terms of equipment, the weapons that we have, and hopefully, hope to God, we never have to use them.
It's probably time to stop calling people who believe in UFOs crackpots after the recent revelation that there's actually a Pentagon task force looking into them.
Those materials were engineered at an atomic level. It's a capability that we don't even possess. If they can prove that and demonstrate that, that'll raise a lot of interesting questions.
Yeah, you think?
And after receiving 3 Israeli security awards, retired Israeli general and respected professor Chaim Eshed is now unveiling that yes, there are aliens among us, yes, Israel has made contact with them, and no, humanity is not ready for them.
This former space official also claims that President Trump knows about the alien existence, but was asked not to say anything to avoid the mass hysteria.
I can't speak on behalf of the government. Obviously, I'm not in the U.S. government anymore. My personal belief is that there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
All of these videos have been leaked in the past, but the U.S. government now confirms they are genuine.
Before you leave office, will you let us know if there's aliens?
I won't talk to you about what I know about it, but it's very interesting.
That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. It is an LNS, dude. Well, if there's a thing, it's rotating.
The newest branch of our military is called the Space Force.
UFO experts are now saying this is secular researchers. They are now saying that these beings are not coming from outer space, far across the universe. They said they're coming from inner space. They're coming from another dimensions, and that just happens to be what the angels and demons do. Interesting. In fact, they say there's no need to entertain this thought that they're coming from outside Earth. Listen to this. This is secular researchers, and this is Flying Saucer Review, folks. This is a secular entity. Gordon Creighton, the editor, he said, quote, "There seems to be no evidence yet that any of these craft or beings originate from where? outer space, okay? Brad Steiger says, we are dealing with a multidimensional paraphysical phenomenon which is largely indigenous to where? Planet Earth. And finally, Arthur C. Clarke, he says, one theory that can no longer be taken very seriously is that UFOs are what? Interstellar spaceships, i.e. that they come from outer space. We should not even entertain that idea because that's not what the secular researchers have witnessed over decades of research. We are dealing with a yet unrecognized level of consciousness independent of man, but closely linked to the earth. I do not believe anymore secular research that UFOs are simply the spacecraft of some race of extraterrestrial visitors. This notion is too simplistic to explain their appearance, the frequency of their manifestations through recorded history, and an impressive parallel can be made between UFO occupants and the popular conceptions of what? Demons. That's secular research, folks. And he goes on. He says the medical examination to which abductees are said to have been subjected to, often accompanied by sadistic manipulation, listen, is reminiscent of the medieval tales of encounters with who? Demons. He says, in fact, the symbolic display seen by the abductees is identical to the type of initiations ritual or astral voyage that is embedded in the occult traditions of every culture on the planet. He says, thus, the structure of abduction stories is identical to occult initiation rituals. UFO researcher Lynn Cato said, a large part of the available UFO literature is closely linked with mysticism and the metaphysical, not science. He said it deals with subjects like mental telepathy, automatic writing, and invisible entities, as well as phenomena like poltergeist or ghost manifestations or possession. Shocker. He says many of the UFO reports now being published in the popular press recount alleged incidences that are strikingly similar to demonic possession and psychic phenomena. Secular researcher. Dr. Pierre Guin, he's one of the eminent ones in the French Council of Science research, says UFO behavior is more akin to what? Magic than it is to physics as we know it. He says the modern UFO knots and the demons of past days are probably what? Identical. And one more, John Keel, outside of Jacques Vallée, this guy's probably one of the most informed secular guys on the planet dealing with this topic. And here's what he says. He said the manifestations and occurrences described in this imposing literature on demonology are similar, if not entirely identical, to the UFO phenomena itself. The UFO manifestations seem to be, by and large, merely minor variations of the age-old demonological phenomenon.
The first time I met him, that space-based weapons were a dangerous, destabilizing, too costly, unnecessary, untestable, unworkable idea. And that the last card that was being held was the extraterrestrial enemy card. The intensity with which he said that made me realize that he knew something that he was too afraid to mention. He was too afraid to talk about it. He would not tell me the details. I'm not sure that I would have absorbed them if he had told me the details or even believed him in 1974. But there was no question that that man knew and had a need to know, I found out later. There's no doubt in my mind that Wernher von Braun knew about the extraterrestrial issue. And when he explained to me the reasons for why weapons were going to be put into space, the enemies against whom we were going to build these weapons, and that all of that was a lie. And when he mentioned the extraterrestrial card, that extraterrestrials, aliens he called them, were going to be identified as the final enemy against whom we were going to build space-based weapons back in '74, the way he said it to me, there was no doubt in my mind that he knew something that he was too afraid to talk about. Wernher von Braun never spoke to me about any of the details that he knew, or might have known, or thought about related to extraterrestrials, except that extraterrestrials were one day going to be identified as an enemy against whom we are going to have to build an enormous space-based weapon system. Even though he didn't give me the details, however, the look in his eyes made it clear to me that he knew that there was something going on that was a big secret that he could not divulge. Wernher von Braun actually told me that the spin was a lie, that the premise for space-based weaponry, the reasons that were going to be given, the enemies that we were going to identify, were all based on a lie.